Greetings comic book lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. Crossovers. If you've been here a while, you'll know that I'm a fan of crossovers, whether they are weird or make sense. The first video I ever made for this channel was about a crossover comic. It's impressive how sometimes two concepts that don't seem like they're going to work actually pair together quite nicely, or how sometimes ideas that seem like they should be a match made in heaven turn out to be awful. This team up is more in the, okay, that's a thing that happened team of crossovers, or perhaps the cash grab category. It's Vampirella and Aliens, or rather Aliens/Vampirella. Vampirella is no stranger to crossovers, and they often have this vibe to them. You've got your more obvious works like Vampirella and Red Sonja, Vampirella and Deja Thorne, Vampirella and the Darkness. Then it can veer, Vampirella/Army of Darkness, Vampirella versus Reanimator, Vampirella and Red Sonja meet Betty and Veronica, Vampirella and Catwoman. Why? Just cuz. There's a lot. We're just scratching the surface. The Alien franchise is also no stranger to comic book formatting, with their own books as well as numerous crossovers. At the time of this recording, they have a deal worked out with Marvel, but previously they've worked with DC and had their own standalone books. So this crossover seems very much to be one of those, people like this, people like that, we've crossed them over with other things, let's put them together. Also, think of the covers, and they did. This series is from late 2015 to early 2016 and was a 6-issue miniseries. It was released by Dynamite Entertainment and Dark Horse Comics. This was one where they were really pushing the whole digital aspect, announcing loudly digital exclusivity and being released digitally. That's a trend that waxes and wanes, not the release of digital comics themselves, but the hyping it up aspect. So what happens when aliens meet Vampirella? Well, stay tuned to find out, but before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Join us on this comic book journey. Aliens/Vampirella was written by Karina Bechko, with art by Javier Garcia Miranda. To dive into this series, you need just base passing knowledge on both of these franchises. If you know more, it won't necessarily enhance the experience all that much. You'll get a few more of the references, but it's not a make or break type thing. For example, if you know Aliens, you'll see Wayland Corporation and be like, I know that reference, but it doesn't actually factor in the fact that they're Wayland doesn't have anything to do with anything. Vampirella is a vampire, and that's almost all you need to know about her. Neither of her backstories, or whatever they're doing with her backstory currently, really seem to factor into this. Although it does feel like one of them potentially really could have. Let me give you a cliff notes on some Vampirella origins for those who know nothing about Vampirella, aside from her costume, that is, because most people know about her costume. Vampirella made her first appearance in 1969 under the banner of Warren Publishing in a horror comic anthology series bearing her name. During this time, her backstory was that she was an alien from the planet Draculon. Yes, an alien vampire. So good. The inhabitants of that planet were known as the Vampiri, or Vampiri. Her planet is beset by terrible droughts, their blood rivers are drying up, and so when a spacecraft from Earth crashes on her planet, she gets on board and her adventures begin. She ends up on Earth actually hunting dark remnants of her own kind who were sired by Dracula, who is also from Draculon, but who had left centuries prior and ended up on Earth. Alien vampire Dracula. Which, I mean, since this is about aliens, you would assume, but there's another origin. After some company-wide shakeups and a bankruptcy that resulted in the character being owned by Harris Comics, some lawsuits, and a little later on, we had a new origin. Bye-bye aliens. Now Vampirella was the daughter of Lilith, who in some lore is said to be the first wife of Adam. This is where it gets really convoluted. At first it said that Lilith had Vampirella to repent and that she was going to train her to fight for good. Draculon was a real place and Vampirella thought that she was from there, but she'd been brainwashed to think it was another planet when really it was a hell dimension. But that being a hell dimension retcon came later, alongside changing who had brainwashed her and changing whether she'd been raised to fight evil or be evil. It was a whole thing. At one point there's a mirror that her mom can hold up and it just makes her believe whatever backstory her mom wants her to believe at that moment. It's a Deus Ex mirror. The 2019 run did not help me. Now I am more confuzzled than ever as to what the origin is supposed to be. So if you've kept up with Vampirella all this time and you're in the know, leave that down below for the people. And for me. Either way, it doesn't really factor into this specific crossover, but it's good to know. Space time, Xenomorphs, go! The covers for this series are really solid and really sell the concept. Issue 1's cover by Gabriel Hardman puts everything up front. You've got a giant xenomorph hovering behind a seemingly unaware but slightly menacing Vampirella, wearing her iconic and for some controversial costume, as she looks out upon all the pods containing facehuggers. It's a really cool cover and it does bring that kind of visceral, look quoi, I must know kind of reaction. We open seeing some individuals dressed in your stereotypical monk garb, fleeing from xenomorphs. Only they're not human, they're vampires, or Nosferatu as they're called in this story. They prefer to be called that. Vampirella makes a point. How dare you. One of these vampires tries to bite the alien and his face melts off, because xenomorphs have acidic blood. Just dangerous. Dangerous all around. Stay away. Then we cut to Mars. A ship is approaching and Vampirella is on board. This is the one and only glimpse of her classic attire in this series' interiors, because, well, they're in space stations and then they're on a little space colony and then underground. So she's in a spacesuit for most of it. So if you were buying it for that cheesecake, well, I'm sorry. We're introduced to our cast of characters on the Mars colony station, but you really only need to care about two of them, and that's Tucker and Lars. All the others you can pretty much be introduced to as alien victim number 1, alien victim number 2, and then just keep counting as you need. So Vampirella is there because they found a base underneath their base, and it's thousands of years old, and they found some vampire corpses in there writing, and they decide that they need her to come and help translate, and, you know, just try and get some vampire insight. There are some tensions between Vampirella and the crew who don't really like that she's a vampire, but it's not really brought up until later on when suddenly it needs to matter. When you look at all their faces when they first meet her, nobody looks like, ah, vampire. That doesn't happen until later on. They go down to the catacombs, as they've been calling them, and they've done a lot. In fact, Vampirella's a little upset, but she cheers herself up by listening to Lars's backstory. Did you know that he has a wife who he hasn't seen for 7 months and he can't wait to talk to her again? You can just start counting down the hours for Lars. Pour out some drinks for your homie Lars. F's in the chat. You know he's not gonna make it with a backstory like that. The team find a nest of alien pods behind a wall where they had found the ancient vampire corpses. And here's where you see some of the vampire bigotry start to emerge, where they ask a really bizarre question of, oh, is this how vampires reproduce? Which then kind of leads you down a rabbit hole of how much do they or don't they know about vampires, and if they don't know that much, why would they feel comfortable inviting Vampirella? Vampirella's face is my face. So you can tell that this crew is from one of those later alien outings in the franchise, because they have not come down prepared. Not only do they not have any kind of oxygen supply or helmets, they're just breathing it all in because it's fine. They also didn't bring down any medical supplies, food, nothing. I guess they knew they were dying, so they wanted to pack light. They don't even examine the pods with any equipment or anything. Not that they have time to. The pods, of course, open, and it's facehugger time. Everybody except for Lars gets faced. And there is a really cool panel while Vampirella is unconscious, and props for getting that Giger vibe. This is with a facehugger in this panel, and that of course means it's very vagina-y, because his art has a lot of that going on. As everybody comes to, they realize that it's been several hours, and then they argue about what they're gonna do, because Lars called up to Tucker, who then put them on a mandatory quarantine even though they don't have any food or anything because they didn't plan ahead. Now they're all of a sudden worried about what happens if Vampirella gets hungry. She's a vampire, and then she's offended, and then an alien bursts out of Vampirella's chest, because this alien experience is going ahead at warp 10, and everybody who does an alien story feels obligated to have to put one of those chest burster scenes in. Maybe they make you, maybe it's on the editorial mandate, like must have alien burst out of chest. Issue 2. We're introduced to the relief ship that has Lars's wife on it and meet some of the characters on there, but aside from Lars's wife, none of them really matter. Back in the catacombs, aliens are bursting out of chests everywhere, and everybody's dead except for Lars and Vampirella. And she has to feed on Lars to help herself heal. She promises that she's not going to turn him though. I want to help. I mean, but I'm trying, but... Well, try harder. Vampirella is all business. She wanted to seal the pod room from the start, and now she wants them to make sure that they eradicate these aliens, that they don't make it up to the surface. On the surface, despite being informed about the whole alien facehugger situation, and Lars calling up to them and being, oh my god, there are parasite things bursting out of chests, which you can see the facehuggers on the ground. Suddenly, there's all this unestablished anti-vampire bias from Tucker. Tucker decides that this is all Vampirella's fault. Going below awakens something in her. Clearly, this is just some vampire thing that nobody knew about before, that had never happened before on Earth, ever. There is one guy whose entire role throughout the rest of this series is to question Tucker and basically be the voice inside my head. Just, Tucker, what are you doing? That doesn't make sense, Tucker. But nobody listens to him. They just assume that Lars must be in her thrall. And who knows how vampires reproduce, so I guess it's a thing that they don't know? I don't know. This would all be much more compelling if we, the readers, knew what the status was on vampires in this world. Are they out and in the open, True Blood style, or is some things about them thought to be urban legend? I don't know. And normally it wouldn't matter, but they keep bringing it up, so then it kind of does matter. Why would a society that has accepted that vampires exist and not been surprised at finding finding an ancient vampire base on Mars that predates them by millennia, have trouble believing in aliens that they can see lying on the ground in front of them. They send down an armed escort to go get them, and I'll call them opening snack because they all get massacred by now a fully grown xenomorph. Vampirella escapes with Lars, flying him away and into a deeper part of the vampire base. People don't understand. To them, all vampires are monsters. End of story. Is it though? Also, I don't know what voice I've given Vampirella, but I've committed to it, so there it is. They find themselves in the blood collection room where humans are dangling on meat hooks and vats are full of blood. But I thought all the vampires were long gone, and this looks fresh. Spoiler, we're gonna find some vampires, but they've been asleep for a long time, so why is the blood still so fresh? Issue 3. Tucker sees the footage through the armed escort's cameras of them being killed by xenomorphs. We have on-screen video evidence, and his response is that what vampires look like? If you burn off their skin or something? Way to commit. It actually comes across as odd given these circumstances. You could make this work, but it's a hard sell when you're seeing a xenomorph in the flesh and labeling it some unknown species of vampire. You could say it's because humans seem to know little about vampires, but even so, Tucker goes above and beyond in his dedication to this idea as the series goes on. This place, I really don't care for it. Mummified bloodsuckers are okay, but dead humans give you the creeps, huh? Well, yeah, they do. This whole exchange, beautiful. Also, that fresh blood on the ground from last issue, gone, vanished. Poof, what blood? They're able to reactivate the equipment inside of this room, and so they're able to watch the last security footage from this base, so they see the vampires being killed by these xenomorphs. While this is going on, Tucker has decided that they need to kill everything down below, and so they're gonna flood the place with some ammonia-type gas, which, would that even work on vampires? I feel like the only person they're guaranteed to kill is Lars. While all this is going on, one of the aliens has managed to tunnel its way up and burst through the surface, and so be on the top in the colony proper. Well, the base is not colony yet, really. They're just starting out. They're probably not going to come back though after this, because you know it's not a work of fiction about aliens unless they go through the vents somehow. Issue 4. This one gave me my favorite Tucker line. We all knew the risks when we took this assignment. At least Lars died doing something he loved. He loved being asphyxiated deep under the surface on an alien planet. Come on, Tucker. I love that character so much. I'm just gonna call him Sane Guy. Vampirella and Lars have managed to escape to the surface, but one of Vampirella's wings got torn off, so she's lost some blood. And the aliens are in pursuit. They follow them up. Lars manages to sneak a call up to his wife as her relief ship approaches and tells her not to trust Tucker and tells her what's going on. He still defends Tucker a little bit though. He's like, he's only doing what he thinks is right. But to that I say, come on, Tucker. The alien that bursts forth from Vampirella is a queen, because of course she is, and is laying more pods in the garden. And as they try to get away, they're stopped by a vampire, because some of them were still just asleep deep inside the earth. No, you know that thing where vampires can just lay dormant for centuries. It happens to them sometimes, a really long sleep. Issue 5. I love the alien on this cover so much. It's like a dragon, a xenomorph dragon. This vampire, Nosferatu, newcomer, transforms into a giant bat and flies off with Vampirella and Lars. And Vampirella has to save Lars and say that no, he's her human, no eat, because our Nosferatu comes from a time when humans were basically cattle. Thanks to this character though, we get a detailed recounting of what happened on the base. So the length of time she was out was because of the change in rhythms on the planet combined with the sleep chamber, which made some of them slumber for longer. They went to Mars to be liberated from the tyranny of the Daystar, as she puts it. Even though Mars also orbits the Daystar, so I don't see how they're escaping the tyranny. If they mean by going underground, why couldn't they just build subterranean caverns on Earth? You don't need to go to space to do that. You have not escaped the Daystar. She left and was part of the animal husbandry team, which means they brought a bunch of humans along as a food source. The humans, however, breed much too slowly, something they did not factor in, and so they're running out of food. So they can do all the calculations and build all the technology for space travel, but they can't calculate how much food they need or how long it takes humans to breed, even though they are keeping them as cattle. Also, humans need water, and they didn't factor for that either. They looked at Mars in the sky and assumed that it must be covered in water, or blood rather, thought it was blood, but they got there and it was dry, so now they have to find some water. They do find some water, but they also find Martians, a group of aliens who were there before them, and they're all dead and their chests are burst open, but you know, there's no problem there. I'm sure it's fine. They also find aliens, and they're killed by them except for a few who went to ground. Sarah, Lars' wife, is now having the ship land on the base. Lars does not want this because, well, aliens. But it's a good thing she called him so that they could FaceTime while he dies. Cause yep, this is the end of Lars. Say bye to Lars. The blood that bursts forth from him coats our new Nosferatu, giving her renewed strength, and also a bunch of rats rise from the depths and start eating the alien pods. Tucker shows up. I'm so excited, and you know he's still blaming Vampirella. You
what have you done?
I mean, at least this time she looks slightly suspicious because she's with an ancient vampire. This would have worked better if Tucker and the people above ground had never seen the alien. If they just lost contact and found a bunch of bodies and blood everywhere. Also, big hand and round for Lars for making it all the way to issue 5. Good job, Lars. Lars, everybody. Last issue. Sarah, having witnessed her husband's death, knows that, well, it's not vampires, and she decides that they need to blow it all up. Look, Tucker came down here with a wooden stake and a mallet. I love it. And then he gets killed by a xenomorph, which serves him right, to be honest. So now it's everybody versus the aliens. We've got the giant queen thing. We've got face huggers. It's just a giant brawl. Gotta make it to the ship that his wife is landing. The survivors. Gotta get off before she blows it all up. We also take some time out that we don't have for our ancient vampire to learn that humans not only now control Mars, but the Earth. But this is so that she can sacrifice herself for the group, saying that her time is past. There is no place for her. So only 2 people make it. Vampirella and the guy who is talking common sense and trying to tell Tucker that his plans were mad. Mad, I say. Good. I'm glad he made it. And then they blow it up. And the last panel is one of Lars's wife, Sarah, crying. The end. Aliens meet Vampirella, or slash Vampirella. That was a thing that I read. I'm about to make a bold claim. Now, most likely this would destroy or tank the sales of the book, or not leave it being something that a lot of people would go for, but I think the story would be better off without the inclusion of aliens or the Alien franchise. Maybe some aliens, but not the Xenomorphs. So basically, take away the crossover element. So a new comic entirely. The whole aliens angle ends up falling back on, at this point, very familiar tropes and scares. You have the alien pods, face huggers, chest bursting, acid blood, big alien queen. For most, it's stuff they've seen before. And it's highly likely that if you're picking up a book this niche, it's for one or both of these franchises, so you'll be familiar with what you're getting. And you may still be hoping for something a little new. And if you are unfamiliar with either concept, it's not the finest showcasing of the aliens, because it's all very fast. I know I turned to Snapper there for a minute. They're very much just there, and they act like, oh no, monsters we need to run away from, and so they pull a bit of focus from the narrative aspect of the story, which for me was the more interesting part. The idea of an ancient vampire colony on Mars that failed, existing millennia before humans ever arrive, is interesting. So is the idea of them bringing early humans with them. You could take or leave the whole there were Martians before angle. You could also make them more well prepared, like having enough food and already thinking about water and still failing. Removing the aliens would also give you time to focus on the tense human-vampire relations, so that you get the distrust between Vampirella and the rest of the crew, which would then escalate when you find these areas of the base with evidence of blood rooms and the like. Side note, when they got to that room, the power was off, and it just occurred to me there were giant vats full of blood sitting there, and it was fresh. But what was keeping it fresh if the power was off? It should have just been curdled and black dust, but I guess that wouldn't have looked as good when the xenomorph burst through it. For what the story was, it was okay, and it definitely gave you what it said it was going to. It gave you aliens, and it gave you Vampirella, and it gave you lots of aliens killing things and Vampirella going around and being a vampire and being cool. It was a little bloated though. There were a lot of characters, and this again was a result of the alien part of the story, because you need to have all those extra people for the alien to kill. Without that, you could have streamlined this experience and focused more on some of the characters. It could have given it a Thing-esque paranoid vibe. Maybe have the awakened vampire be the thing stalking them, which would also give them a reason to suspect Vampirella, as then the deaths and the dead bodies that they find would look like vampire victims. Because, well, they would be. They just wouldn't be her victims. It would also make Tucker's character seem more understandable, whereas here he's ludicrous. I get what they're trying to do with Tucker, but it's not well executed. He goes so far, and it seems like he doesn't want to believe it's anything other than vampires, which admittedly would have been an interesting approach to take. Choosing to believe in the devil that one already knows rather than contemplate something potentially terrifying of this alien, this truly alien concept that his mind can't wrap itself around. But that's just me extrapolating. That is not how it was presented in the story. The art is the same throughout and has some really good alien moments. On the whole, I'd say this is worth it if you're a big hardcore collector of Vampirella, the Aliens franchise tie-ins, or crossovers. It's okay. Not terrible, not amazing, and definitely flawed. But those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. Is this your favorite series? Are you about to challenge me to a duel for this book's honor? Do you like the Alien tie-ins? Are you a fan of Vampirella? And yes, I'm sure some of you have noticed the shirt. This is a Nicolas Cage shirt. I will show you all the shirt. It says, "Despite all my rage, I am still just a Nicolas Cage." Share all of your thoughts down below, and while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to spend it discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye!